The First Vice President, a book launch. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Margie TV. Today is a great day as we are here for the book launch of our very own first Vice President of Ghana, West Africa. If you're here today, welcome, welcome, welcome. Share the link with your network, invite your friends. We're here to honor a great, great, great man of Ghana. This is a historical book. It has received raving reviews. But you know what? As our culture requires, before we start everything as Christians, we want to start with a prayer. And so at this time, we will be inviting the Reverend J.W. deGraft-Johnson into the house to join us, and so that he can start us off with prayer. Reverend deGraft-Johnson, I hope you are ready for us. Here we go.
Thank you very much, and happy good evening to all of you. I am currently in Uganda on a peace mission, accompanying the peace process in South Sudan as part of my role as the General Secretary of the Council of Anglican Provinces in Africa. And it's my delight to be with you this evening as we launch the book of Ankanana Binyin, also known as Dr. J.W.S. deGraft-Johnson, the first Vice President of Ghana. Let us pray. God our Father, creator and sustainer of life, in whose hands there is life and death. We thank you this evening for the opportunity to be in your presence as we dedicate and launch this book in memory of your servant, Joseph William Swain deGraft-Johnson, whom you called and gave to the country Ghana in various services for the good of the nation and for the glory of the kingdom of heaven. You counted his days and you called him to yourself to eternal rest. But Father, you have left us with a memory that is recorded in the book that we are about to launch. And so we dedicate this little ceremony to your glory, and we pray that, Father, you would be with us as we begin, as we continue, and as we end. We pray that the memory of your servant, J.W.S. deGraft-Johnson, would be alive in the heart and in the minds of not only his children and family members, but the entire country. That this book will be a resource for generations to come, not only in the political, but in the academia, in the social life, and particularly, Lord, to recall our various services to the nation and to your kingdom. We thank you for the opportunity to pen down these words as has been put in the book. And we pray for a wide readership, and not only readership, but also internalizing the good works that you have, through your servant, accomplished in this country, Ghana. We thank you. In Jesus' name have we prayed. He who taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today and always our daily bread. And forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen, amen, and amen. Thank you so much, Rev, for this powerful prayer. We are hoping for a successful launch today. If you're here and you have our link, please share it with your network. Join us. Thank you for joining us. If you are already here, I think I'm repeating that over and over again because we are showing our appreciation to you. Now, let us see it in your comments wherever you're watching from, because we would love to know where our audience is. Now, we're here for a special lady, Dr. Letitia deGraft-Okyere, and we want to know about her. And so, as we want to learn about her, we're going to bring Mrs. Rosamond Sapon Owens, a dear friend, to tell us about the author of the book.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from every part of the world you are. Rev, thank you for those prayers. I think that is apt for today. Margie, thank you for introduction, and thank you for helping spearhead this book launch. I am delighted to be here this morning, this afternoon, this evening, depending on where you are, to celebrate Letitia deGraft-Johnson, Dr. Letitia deGraft-Okyere, and this book that Tish has written. I am particularly honored that she invited me to be a part of her launch party. When I think about the passion, anxiety, commitment, and personal investment Letitia has put into this project, it is worth applauding. Letitia emailed me a PDF of the book several weeks ago, and I have to admit, I spent a couple of days engrossed in it. I've followed Letitia's work for almost 2 years, but the content in the book fleshed out her family background and history of the Fantas and Cape Coast, Elmina, and the development of how she went about her work, her research, and writing, coupled with the family and national history, especially for Ghana, close to Independence Day, 6th March. This is timely and appropriate. And Tish, I want to say thank you for an amazing, amazing feat. This is the kind of book that should be written by one of those houses, right? Because I am, unlike Letitia, who writes books which almost look like encyclopedias, I am a Lions historian. I write children's historical nonfiction, which is about 10 chapters, and nothing can be compared to a 400+ page book. I often ask myself, how does Letitia does this? She makes it appear effortless, but it is anything but that. As you know, this is a product 6 years in the making, researching, learning, discipline, writing, editing. And if you know Letitia, proofreading to the umpteenth time. For me, this book constitutes one of the most compelling pieces of work by a writer in written history. And isn't it amazing that Tish, as we affectionately called her, is an indie writer, and she actually published this book herself. Dr. Letitia deGraft-Okyere, known to us as Tish, is a current public health administrator with the State Health Department. Letitia was born in Kumasi, so like me, she is my fellow Kumerican. In Ghana, West Africa, the 5th of 6 children. Letitia has more degrees than a thermometer, right? I just learned that she even has a law degree. No wonder Tish stands her ground every time. She knows the law. She knows her rights, so she stands it, right? So Letitia studied secondary education at Wesley Girls High School. That's how we are kin. So we are gay sisters, and there's a lot of 87-year group who are here. And Miss Tish, we applaud you. Letitia completed Wesley Girls and then attended sixth form in Harrow, London. She went to the University of Leeds to study law, and I didn't know that. Oh, Tish. She also went to law school And she also enrolled with a master's in health services administration and later with her PhD. So when I tell you I live in Minnesota, our thermometer is longer than most states, right? So if I tell you Letitia's degrees are longer than the degrees on the thermometer, you can agree with me. What more can I say? For those who know Tish, she is easygoing, she's kind, soft-spoken, and sweet. Letitia, for our 87-year group, she is a group editor, proofreader. Tish writes all our important documents and things. And then for me, as a friend, Tish is my musketeer. She's the second musketeer in the Lions Historian, where we write children's historians books. And Tish is proofreader, editor. She's everything. Like, Tish can see anything that the ordinary eye cannot see. So a book is not done. It can go through Margie, myself, editors, proofreaders, like all of us who are author sisters. We can all go through the book. Tish can look at that manuscript and come up with about 300 corrections to make. And that is Tish. So for those of you who understand Chi, Letitia's dad of blessed memory used to say in the Fanti language, I've been to the Kusi. Letitia, wherever your mom and dad is, I'm sure your dad is saying, Tish, are you cool? Now I've been to the Kusi. It was author Toni Morrison who said that if there's a book you want to read but haven't been written yet, then you must write it. And that is what exactly Letitia did. Letitia knew that in the annals of the Ghanaian history, such a book needed to be a part of the books. So I'd like to congratulate Letitia in publishing this book. It's well thought of, and I will say it's also a scholarly because it is written by a scholar, right? My fellow scholar who is a Kumerican, and Tish, Ayuko Ayaze. And Tish, I think that these books make the case for you as a major writer whose body of work can be alongside the other great authors. And if there was ever a museum of books like the Louvre, like Tish, this book will be by the Mona Lisa. And Tish, say, now I've been so today, Kusi. We are so proud of you and thank you. And God bless you and all your efforts. Thank you for being such a great addition to my life, a great addition to the life of the 87-year group. We love you, Tish. Sure. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Rosamond, for that wonderful introduction. We can learn from that. Tish is an amazing person, and she is learned. She's a good writer. She catches mistakes. We cannot wait for the people in the audience to get their hands on the book. And I'm seeing here that we are getting all these comments. We have so exciting. Hey, congratulations to you. The comments are unbelievable. Great. Congratulations, Titch. We have Eudora Opong. We have Messi Brew. Thank you, Hector Johnson. Louise Nkrumah. Rachel Baku, Comfort. The list goes on and on. We're so happy to have all of you join us here. To my younger self, hey, back at you. If you're here, share this link with your network because we want to hear Tish read this excerpt about her dad. And so at this time, if Tish is ready, we're going to be bringing her from the green room. Thank you once again, Rosie, for that introduction of your dear friend from Wesley Girls. Welcome to the entire Wesley Girls crew that have joined tonight in Ghana and this afternoon in the USA, UK, from wherever you're watching from. Now, be dropping that in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us for this amazing book launch. At this time, let us bring Dr. Letitia Okyere into the house. Give her a round of applause, everyone. A round of applause, a round of applause. Hello, Dr. Letitia.
Hello, Marjorie. Thank you so much for the floor. Thank you so much for handling this and doing such an amazing job. Thank you so much.
Well, we know that we have an awesome program ahead of us. But before we get into the weeds of the book, we just want to hear you read an excerpt for us.
Okay, so thank you for the floor again. And so what I did, I took an excerpt from the prologue, and I took another one from the chapter on detention, and I selected these pieces simply because you notice that if you have the book, it's in first person, and this is because a few years after he died, I found a script. I suspect that maybe he had been putting his thoughts down and wanting to put a book together. And so in this project, what I did was take the script that he wrote and try to insert pieces of it appropriately in the book. So when you do have the book, you will notice that there are little sections in first person tense, and those were actually written by him. Now that being my dad, yes. So I'll just go ahead with this. And so 2 hours later, soldiers escorted me to vehicles bound for Nsawam. They directed that I climb into an armored one full of soldiers. The vehicles pulled out and they shot into the air for no reason except to intimidate civilians. They looked furious. One young man threatened, "You people are lucky this is not like June 1979. Otherwise, I will peel off your nails." Another slightly more sober soldier asked him to calm down. He reacted violently. "You have no right to tell me what to do and what not to do." There were no signs of discipline, and the few officers present did not carry any sway. The biggest bully or the most fearful lorded over everyone. The exchange between them was neither polite nor courteous. A characteristic of military vehicles in those revolutionary times was speed, no exception here, zooming rapidly. Normally, the type of driving is reckless, but they all seem to enjoy it, not one brave enough to show any discomfort. So from the recce guard room, went to cantonments to pick up party activists and colleagues I met the previous day. I remained in the vehicle while most soldiers descended. Two stayed behind with their rifles directed at me. In a short time, detainees escorted to the vehicle included S.O. Lamte, A.E. Agwe, Samuel Asante Fosuhene, Felix Amua, and Mr. Tinga. KSP Jantua went to Ashore Fort earlier. The drive from cantonments to Nsawam prison went to the same reckless manner, interspersed with persistent shooting in the air and horn blowing. On many occasions, we were a hair's breadth away from a serious wreck. Mr. Tinga had the worst of it. A young soldier perched between the two of us pulled her hair the whole trip. I recognized the soldier as one of those who had tortured me the previous day. "You are all going to die, useless people," he said in a threatening manner, doing the most shooting while occasionally sticking the butt of his rifle into us. I found out his nickname, Rock. Rock was an entirely different person when sober, friendly even with an occasional smile. However, on this day, he seemed incapable of any warmth. So finally, we arrived at Nsawam Medium Security Prison. I had never been to prison, and neither did I dream I would one day end up there. However, anyone who entered Ghanaian politics, knew its crowning glory was a session at Nsawam. We hope to skip this aspect of political life, working to respect human rights as we look forward to subsequent governments preserving the trend. In the early 1960s, the mention of Nsawam sent shivers down the spine. After an attempt on Nkrumah's life, K. Bedema introduced the Preventive Detention Bill in Parliament that subsequently passed. The opposition worked on destabilizing the government, even if it meant a violent end, while Nkrumah sought to protect the First Republic. Indeed, after the 1966 coup, opposition members admitted to plots to assassinate Nkrumah with explosives. Implementation of the Prevention Detention Act led to the arrest of political dissenters within the CPP and opposition, as rumors about activities at Nsawam became rampant. After Emmanuel Obechebi Lamte's death in 1963, and J.B. Danquist in 1965 following detention, the rumors escalated. We heard stories of prisoners subjected to physical molestation, often injected with chemicals causing weakness to eliminate opposition to the government. And there were hideous stories about the condemned block, quiet on the outside but menacing to occupants sentenced to death. Despite my thoughts that Thursday afternoon, traveling recklessly through Accra from the assault at Bema camp, while being showered with insults from soldiers who dished out physical abuse when not shooting intermittently into the air, arrival at Nsawam seemed like a move to a peaceful haven. From a distance, the prison resembled an Indian castle, nothing visible but surrounding high walls. To the right of the main Nsawam prison was a much smaller one for females. We stopped at the female prison first. The armored vehicle did not go through the gates. It parked, and soldiers forcibly pushed Miss Atinga, thrusting her out. Miss Atinga was the former PNP MP for Buem in the Volta region. So 2 soldiers accompanied her through the gates and soon returned. And then we continued to the male prison. The huge gate opened and we drove through. Then I noticed a second gate beyond which the military vehicle could not travel. The soldiers directed we pick up our belongings and alight from the armored vehicle. At a tiny office between the 2 gates, prison guards searched us, recording basic particulars. Afterwards, they took custody of us, escorting us beyond the second gate, parting ways with the soldiers. Looking around, I thought in Nsawam prison looked quite impressive. I came to a well-designed secondary school. As we walked to the reception building's ground floor, I noticed some colleagues carried burden materials and clothing. I had nothing with me. The young lieutenant who picked me up from Cantonment's police station told me I did not need any personal items. Then he changed his mind in response to the questioning gazes from my colleagues. At the military police depot, he insisted on returning my briefcase and back to my family, very sure I would have no need for them. It occurred to me that when I reported that Wednesday, the authorities planned it to be my last. At the reception, prison wardens politely asked us to take seats. One walked toward me, specifically asked about my well-being, adding that he hoped the soldiers had not treated me badly. Prison regulations demanded a search of all prisoners and removal of all prohibited articles. We were searched individually, certainly with due regard to decency and self-respect. As the soldiers had taken my wallet, wristwatch, and fountain pen in Accra, the only items the wardens found on me were a pipe knife and a lighter. The prison wardens took additional particulars, including weight and height measurements. Within minutes, word of our arrival got around, and Harry Sawyer, former PNP Minister for Transport and Communication, showed up. Since his detention, Harry Sawyer had assumed the role of point person for former PNP administrators. Harry's other duties included liaison between political prisoners and the assistant director of prison, i.e. the director of Nsawam prison. Harry noticed I looked rather weak, and both of us, not knowing the extent of internal injury, recommended a stay at the infirmary together with Felix Amwa, who was the Minister for Eastern Region, while the other detainees went to the annex block. Wardens placed me in an infirmary ward, joining an Alaji from Mali, convicted by the AFRC, a quiet and distinguished-looking personality who took his religion seriously. The ward also had squadron leader Samuel Sabeng Abebrese, also an AFRC convict. It turned out Abebrese was an Infantsipim alum who knew of me, attending after I graduated for the school. Wardens also put my colleague Felix in with me, later adding John B. Grant, who was the MP for Ahanta, and J.W. Boating, who was the Deputy Minister from Agriculture. They were transferred from the annex block. A detainee's introduction to life behind bars, I believe, is largely determined by how he or she got reconciled to the idea of prison. For me, the drop from grass to grace was quite sudden and dramatic. It was exactly a week ago when firing was heard at Bema camp. After my decision to report the day before, coupled with the treatment received, the prison infirmary looked like a AAA hotel accommodation. Also, Abebrese worked to make my stay at the infirmary comfortable, aided by AFRC convict Commander G.E. Osei. and Colonel S. Harry Sawyer brought me bedding, pillowcases, and a few toiletries. I came with nothing but the clothing I had on. As I lay on the bed that evening, after a meal graciously arranged by Bebrese and Commander Osei, I thought it better to start prison sentence with a stay at the infirmary, as conditions are a little better than those on the blocks. It reduced the shock from the sudden change to one station in life. The steel bed was the same as those in any Accra hospital. There were 6 of us in the ward. The external wall had the external windows had fixed louvers resting high above the wall naturally to ensure we could not see outside. At an enclosure at the west wall housed the shower and the ground crouching type of toilet. Overall, reasonable arrangements when kept tidy, and occupants tried to do so. Wardens locked the door at about 8 p.m. and before lights out, Bebrese led us in prayers. I fell asleep soon after it and began my new prison life. General Obasanjo once said, in Africa, when one enters politics, one places at jeopardy one's life, liberty, and property. How painfully true this was of Ghana's political history. Several eminent Ghanaians lost all three because of political careers. Dr. J.B. Dankwa, Emmanuel Obechebi Lamte, Colonel Ignatius Achampon, General Akwesi Efifa, Colonel Roger Feli, General Freda, Major General Edward Utica, Rear Admiral John Amedume, and Major General Robert Kote. Others too many to name lost liberty at one time or another for varying periods. I must admit, when I decided to enter politics, I was very much aware of the risks involved. Then I also remembered the penalty the wise pay for refusing to take part in government is to be ruled by unwise men. We all witnessed the terrible harm that the Achampon regime visited on the nation and the people. I participated in protests by the Association of Recognized Professional Bodies to demand Achampon's resignation. With the ban on politics removed, we hoped for a new domestic tranquility. However, it seemed this was not to be. Life in the infirmary was rather quiet, more so than at the blocks, as I discovered later. Inmates did not have easy access to the infirmary, though a few of our colleagues visited us regularly. I spent most of my time that first week in bed due to the physical trauma to my body. 10 days later, on the prison physician's advice, authorities placed me in a small, separate ward, providing greater privacy and quiet to allow some reading and possibly writing. Fortunately, that same week, I heard from my wife for the very first time. Lily managed to send me some clothing, toiletries, and other items, a bucket, blanket, and mattress. Until then, I totally depended on the generosity of Bebrese, Commander Osei, and Harry Sawyer.
Wow. That was truly deep. You have made your father proud. As you read those words, I could imagine the scenes that were happening, the way these police officers behaved, the way he was treated. Viewers, listeners, this is the kind of history that we need to document about the people that came before us. Oftentimes, we go by word of mouth. What Dr. Letitia has done, has told his father's story from his perspective, in his own words. And I see so many people commenting here. Congratulations, Eudora says. Congratulations, Dr. Letitia, coming from the diagnostics group. Comfort says, this is great. Mercy is loving what you're doing. Hector Johnson says, congrats, Washans. Louisa in Chroma says, good afternoon, congrats, Auntie Tish. So you have so many people saying Rachel Bako is so proud of you. The comments, historic, congrats, wow, from Salom Agboja, Ajopa. I'm not pronouncing some of the words right, but you know, Eudora's comment of resonates with how I feel, listening to those names, hearing the names of all those that have been lost historically, these people had children, peoples whose lives were stolen from them at an early age, at the prime of their lives. Thank you, Letitia, for writing this historic novel. And I cannot wait to get into conversation with you to learn more about your process. But before we do that, I believe that we have Dr. Bertha Sewa Ai, who has read the book, to also give us a testimonial, just like our audience is typing up testimonials and words of affirmations. We're going to bring Dr. Sewa Ai into the house. So, Dr. Letitia, we're going to come back to you soon. Everybody, here comes Dr. Ai. Thank you, Dr. Ai. We're waiting for that testimonial. Thank you.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. I'm excited to be part of this amazing project. And thank you for having me. And for all those who have joined us, I want to say a big thank you for taking the time out of your busy Saturday to be part of this amazing piece of work. I have known Letitia since we went to Form 1 back in 1981. So we're talking 40 years ago. Letitia, I just saw her as a beautiful, gentle spirit. We just knew her as the daughter of the vice president at that time. She was calm, she was smart, she stayed in her lane, and somehow she mysteriously disappeared somewhere in Form 2 or Form 3 without a word to any one of us. And in her book, and more recently, in phone conversations, it came out as to exactly what happened. Her mother just had to tell her, we're leaving this country. And in this book, she details exactly the events that lead to this. I want to encourage everyone, you must get a copy of this book for your own library, for your school, or wherever you may find yourself. Because I don't know what else Letitia is going to be writing in the future, but I think that this book is her opus magnus, meaning in terms of her literary productions, this is probably going to be the peak, because if she does anything after this, it must win a Nobel Peace Prize. I put this book in the category of Kwame Nkrumah's A Biography of Ghana and Barack Obama's book, Dreams for My Father. Why do I put this in that category? First of all, the diction is perfect. The detail, unbelievable, and the grammar is at a professional level. And it goes to what Rosamond was saying earlier. I mean, I picked up the book and I just couldn't put it down. 400 plus pages full of impeccable detail with over 1,500 references. I mean, I won't be surprised if it's easily 2,000 for every one or two sentences. She did interview someone, or she has a newspaper article or a reference to this book. I mean, you have to get a copy of this book. And as our hostess said, if her parents were alive, they'll say, well done, Letitia. You've done us great honor. In fact, everyone should hope that you would have a child who would do this to your legacy. Pretty much pick up everything you've done and put it in a book. In this book, Letitia goes out of her way to portray the picture of a man who dedicated himself to country and his accomplishments. She was not going to let all his accomplishments be swept under the carpet. What I gathered is a man with doubles, born in 1933, died in 1999. For a 27-month stint as the first vice president of the Republic of Ghana, he paid the price of 22 months in jail, and 17 years later, he was fighting to restore democracy. Letitia goes out of her way to talk about what he did when he went to the United Kingdom, and it sets me thinking. So for 27 months as a vice president, he spent 22 horrifying months in prison. And then for the rest of his life, he had to be fighting to restore democracy to a young country. And it also talks about devotion to his beautiful wife, Lily, who, looking at the book, Letitia is an exact replica of her mother. Beautiful woman. And I think that for every Ghanaian, this is why you must have this book. I fell in love with Cape Coast reading this book because Letitia painted such a beautiful picture of the whole layout of Cape Coast, the history of Cape Coast, how the Fantis came to be. And I love the way she injects Fanti and explains it as she goes along. I mean, you would fall in love with this book. And she talks about the slave trade. She goes on to talk about post-colonial Ghana. And I think this book is so important. You know, I've always felt that people who occupy political office, they owe the country an obligation to write about their experiences, why they did what they did, and everything in between. And Letitia allows us to fill this void in post-colonial Ghana because after Kwame Nkrumah was good enough to write the story of his autobiography, which tells us the fight before independence. And then after that, we know a coup d'etat drove him out of the country. But what happened afterwards? Letitia takes the country, which is 20 years old, and tells us the sacrifices that these men put in and what happened in the aftermath. Today, you tell people you're from Ghana. I saw a patient yesterday. Oh, I love your country. It's such a stable country. When you read this book, you realize that the stability that we're enjoying came at a price, at blood, toil, sacrifice of all these men. If you take Ghana as a house that is beautiful, you're looking at it and you're going through the rooms, Letitia not only describes the beautiful rooms in there, but she allows you to open this one room. It's filled with ghosts, people who have died, and she begins to wake the ghosts up and allow them to tell their story. And you realize that the house is not just beautiful by itself. There are some people who have paved the way. She talks about the fear that gripped her family, the fear that gripped her nation, and allows us to relive parts of Ghana's history. And I quote something that she said earlier. It was the one sentence that if you ask me in the whole book, that's what hits me the most, by one of the Nigerian presidents, Olusegun Obasanjo. And she said it earlier that when one enters politics, one places one's life in jeopardy, one's liberty and property in jeopardy. And oh boy, did Joe have to do that? And for those of us who love our country, Letitia also said something that sometimes you can't sit down and watch the unwise rule the country. And so definitely some of us may have to decide to step up to the plate to make sure that the land of our birth becomes what it is. But I think that the book allows you to have a deep thought into the sacrifice and the cost of having to do that. And most politicians have had to pay that price. And finally, there's a person in the Bible that I love reading about. His name is Joseph. He went into prison. And it's interesting, you know, just before I went to bed last night, I just realized that, you know what? Joseph went to prison, and this other Joe was in prison. Joe DG had to go to prison. And for all of you who are listening, I feel that at any point in time, the two prison sentences, Joe DG and Joseph in the Bible, they both went unjustifiably. They didn't understand why they were there. But aftermath, they entered into a period of glory and still contributed. So I just want, as a point of ministry, that all of us will go through a certain prison period of our lives. For Joseph in the Bible, it was about 13 years. For Joe, it was 22 months. For some of you, it may not be a physical prison. You can enter into a phase of your life that looks like a prison, a period you don't understand. After you seemingly did what was good for your country. But during that time of prison, there are things that are being reorganized around you, and you come out and make a lot of impact. So to me, this book is a book that is a must read. I think it should end up on the shelves of every university, everybody's home. It's a great literary work. And Letitia, I could go on, but I just want to say kudos, because this book made me cry. I shed tears, and I texted Letitia. I was crying. It made me cry. It made me smile. It made me proud of the man. It made me proud of all the sacrifices people had made. And I made so many connections to politics today. And it's been a great honor to be able to give a testimonial about this book. Please get your hands on it and buy copies for others. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bether. What a testimonial. And you are so right. The book just brings out all these emotions in you. For me, as I was going through the book and I saw our former vice president in that fancy little toy car, I had a sense of pride because for me, I'm like, y'all look at that bougie man in Ghana, West Africa. Okay. It's a true story. It's a true testament. You see the love, you read about the love through the pages, the family, the ancestors, the grandparents, the direct family line, Letitia's mother, Letitia's father. It is a testament to her family. And you are right, we do fall in love with Cape Coast. For somebody like me who's not from Cape Coast, I couldn't help but to picture the scenery as Letitia described it. And so if you're here today, this is really easy. If you're in the United States, the UK, Canada, you can just go on Amazon.com right now, type in The First Vice President. It's probably going to be the second book that comes up. Click on it, order your copy. And it's not just about ordering your copy once you read it. Don't forget to drop that review so that others will learn about the book. Dr. Bether, so what was your favorite part about the book before I let you go? You're muted, Dr. Bether.
I think, I think I've talked about what affected me politically, learning about the history of Cape Coast and everything. But the part that I liked was after he went to London and the family had relocated to London, how he created, computers were just coming on board. He would help his wife, Lily, with her projects and created an Excel spreadsheet. He was helping with the kids' homework. He was cooking for the children. He would drop Araba, who I found out, based on what I know about Letitia, that Araba is actually Letitia in the book. Drop Araba to work, to school. And I just loved how he impacted people's lives. I mean, I think he gave me a microcosm of how their family life had been, a man who was devoted to his family, that really, no matter what life throws at you, you can still take it and make it beautiful. And I think that Letitia mentioned that Joe also admitted that he was really happy for an opportunity not to be high about, attending meetings, but what appeared to be negative, where he's had to relocate to Britain, allowed him time to just be with his family, just connect with them. And maybe those are the sweet memories he's left in their hearts. So it's a wonderful book that everybody has to read.
Well, those moments, those precious moments, accepting life and embracing life. And I see that our audience is, well said, Dr. B, says Yvonne Kumi. Great testimonial, says Parker. Salom saying, I'm not surprised that Tish produced this masterpiece. Well, Salom, find your copy, read it, drop that review. Dr. B, you will make a fine president or vice president one day, says Rosamond. Well, yes, Dr. B, you are so eloquent and you are brilliant. You are Black history in the making. Thank you. Anita Asamoah says, congratulations, Madame. Zoe Baraka said, it's actually the first book that pops up. Yes, it has climbed up to first on the page. The last time I checked, it was the second. So thank you, Zoe, for checking it out. Guys, if you have Kindle Unlimited, you are able to read the book online. And so if you don't have the time to wait for your hard copy yet, read that Kindle Unlimited version, or you can also purchase it on Kindle or order that hard copy and it will be with you by next week. Thank you so much. I'm seeing all these comments here. We appreciate you. We appreciate everybody who has joined us today. This is the launch of the First Vice President, a book written by Dr. Letitia deGraft-Okyere. We just heard a testimonial from Dr. Ayi. Thank you so much, Dr. Bether, for your kind words. Next up, we're going to be hearing from Dr. David Cornelius, who is a family member. I bet Dr. Cornelius has some fond memories that he is going to to share with us. I can't wait to bring him on stage. Y'all be giving him a round of applause behind your screens because I met him a few minutes ago, and he is a fine young man with some positive words. And so let's welcome Dr. David Cornelius. Welcome, sir.
Hello. Oh, thank you very much for your kind words. Well, thank you very much, Letitia, for making us very proud, for honoring your father. Honor your father and mother so that it shall be well with you. I'm sure we all know where that is coming from. And you've exactly touched a chord with everybody. Thank you also, Marjorie, for hosting the lunch. And thank you, the previous speakers. And also thank you, Osofo deGraft-Johnson. Osofo and I are cousins, but we also share some form of rivalry. He's at the Saddle 81 and I'm Phantom 81, but we will not talk about that today. Today we'll focus on our mission, which is to honor our uncle. Now, who is Uncle Nana Bain? We call him Uncle Nana Bain. We didn't call him Dr. Joseph William Swain deGraft-Johnson. That's a very long name. And as a little boy, you know, it was a long name, but it matched his height as a tall person. And to me, as a young boy growing up, it was such a wonderful, wonderful name. Now, for those of you who are eager to know what the connection is, he was my uncle and I was the nephew. So how did it all start? Well, it starts from the family house in Cape Coast. This family house in Tantry is numbered G125/1, Tantry Road, Cape Coast, popularly called G125/1. Now, this is where Uncle Nabin grew up, or spent most of his life. And his father, Mr. Hector deGraft-Johnson, lived in this house. He was popularly called Uncle Hector. Now, in the same house lived the woman who nurtured Uncle Nabin, Auntie Ajwa. And also in the same house lived Uncle Hector's younger sister called Emma, or Auntie C. So this is where the connection is. My grandmother was Auntie C, or Emma deGraft-Johnson. Now, Emma and Uncle Hector lived in the same house, in family house in Tantry, and she also had children who lived in the same house. There were 8 siblings in total. There are 4 surviving. Now, the 4 surviving are one, Mrs. Araba Cornelius, who is my mother, or call her Irabna Eisen, and she's followed by Professor Eisen of the formerly of the University of Cape Coast, and then Lieutenant Colonel Baba Ejebu Eisen. Sorry, and before her, Mr. Yokwesi Eisen, and then last, Lieutenant Colonel Baba Eisen Ejebu. Now, these siblings and their cousins shared the same family house, and Uncle Nanabe shared a close relationship with my mother, like a brother and sister, and they were of similar age. And as you would notice in the book, you would see that there are pictures that Letitia has labeled from Mrs. Araba Cornelius, and in particular, there were 2 pictures that were discovered in the archives, which showed Uncle Nana being in his school days in Phantom. This is just to sort of illustrate the kind of close brother-sister relationship they shared. Now, what were my earliest memories of Uncle Nana being? Well, in primary school, my earliest memories was a tall or giant who was frequently in our house. They lived in Kumasi, but he spent a lot of time in Accra. He was a very busy person. Apart from being the director of the Building and Road Research Institute, he as you know, he was active with the professional bodies, and those were the times that they were agitating against the Kutua Champion regime. So he was quite a frequent visitor to our house, and our house, which was this, I'm talking about Cantonments, First Secular Road, was a kind of a mini sort of G125/1, because we also had other siblings or other cousins coming there, and Mr. Uncle Bat, who was his bigger brother, was commonly there. So it wasn't uncommon at all for Uncle Anabain to come over to our home and meet either a sibling or a cousin. My memories of him was a very lovely, approachable, friendly person. And the interesting thing about where we lived on First Circular Road in Cantonments was that not only was our home a common place where residents from G125/1 came, but even our neighbors some of them were Cape Coast neighbors in Tantray, and just across us lived Mr. Sego, who incidentally was also a neighbor in Tantray. So it wasn't uncommon at all for Uncle Anabain to come to our home, leave his car, take a stroll, have a good chat, and then return back to our home. So my memories of him was a very lovely person who was loyal to his old friends, to his family, to people he'd known from his childhood. And that struck me as a young boy growing up. Now, moving on from primary school, I went to Infantsville School, and just like he was in and out of our home because of his active life in Accra, he was in and out of Infantsville as well. He was a member of the board of governors. So there were many times I met him in Infantsville School, and my memories go back to when he was in Cape Coast. My mother was in Cape Coast as well, and I would hitch a ride with Uncle Anabain with his 504, what we call it caravan race, driven by the driver back to Infantsville School. There were other times I met him at University of Cape Coast, where Professor Eisen lived, and those were times that we would have a pep chat about how school was, because he was a member of the board of governors, and those days were turbulent times in Infantsville. There were one or two strikes in the school, and he'd come to the school and have a chat with the board of governors, with the whole school. So these were opportunities to get closer to Uncle Anabain. And I remember very well that speech day was another time that he was, you find him on the rostrum. And after speech day, when the crowd moved away to the administration block, I would move along, and you'd see me and call me and have a little chat. And one lovely thing about him, that he was a kind of a very generous person. After chat, he would always make sure he left some little bit of cash in your hands, just for you, for you to be happy. And I thought I was the only beneficiary of his generosity until a few months ago, another colleague said, "Oh, I know Joe Dickey. Oh yes, he works with my dad. And whenever he came to Infantsville, he called me and put a little bit of cash in my hand." Those little things meant so much for us as kids in Infantsville School. And Uncle Anabain had a very big heart, and I'm sure those of us know that we've got some uncles. When you meet them, maybe you're called Peter, and they see you, so John. No. Peter. Uncle Anabain wasn't like that. No, he'd remember your name. And that was a lovely part of Uncle Anabain. Now, moving on from Infantsville, yes, he became the vice president. So obviously, his position on the board of governors ended. So we didn't see him again as a board member. Similar, we as a family in Cantonments didn't see him much because he was very busy. But I can remember 2 occasions that he came to visit our family in Cantonments as a vice president. There were 2 special occasions. One was when the party won the elections. We were there. After 2 or 3 days, a car just drove into our driveway. And in those days, it was a black, big Mercedes. And all we saw was Uncle Anabain being chauffeur-driven. It was a time for joy and celebration. And obviously, it came to spend the wonderful time with his cousin, Auntie Rabna. The second time was a time of sorrow, or should I say mourning. My mother had lost her mother, Aunt Tacy, and he came, obviously, to commiserate with her. He came to spend some time. And that was the kind of personality he was. He was there as a vice president when there was time to celebrate, and he was there again as a vice president when you were mourning. This was the kind of person Uncle Anabain was. Now, Moving forward, I'm coming out to United Kingdom. The last time I met him, this was now I was an adult. I was in my final years in medical school. And this was the time that I came to United Kingdom to spend 2 months on a program. And this was the time to meet Uncle Nabane again. He was then in exile. And there were 3 things I learned from him, which I will never forget. There were 3 lessons I learned from him as a young man growing up. He taught, and these were: 1, being patriotic; 2, being punctual, which was part of leadership. And the last was being humble. Now, when I visited him, he was so much engrossed with politics in Ghana that he was hungry to hear about politics in Ghana. And those were the times that Ghana was moving forward. People were talking about Ghana moving towards being like Malaysia, South Korea, and whatever. And he was so engrossed. And when I listened to him, I was also a bit into politics and with great interest. And he found me an interesting companion. And what struck me, or what broke my heart, was that this was a young, when he became vice president, I think he was 46 years old compared to now. But this was a person with talent, experience, vision. He had done his bit with the building the Road Research Institute, and he was trying to contribute his bit to the country. And this was cut short by a brutal military regime. It struck me how destructive military interventions are in Africa. So the lesson I learned was being patriotic to your country, not just being whatever you are, whether you were a teacher, you were a doctor. Be patriotic, have some love for your country, do something for your country. And this is one thing I learned. The second thing I learned was being punctual. And he put it in a very nice story. Until he was there, I remember, and he said, "David, I hate being late for functions, whether it's state functions or even dinners." And he gave an example, and he said, "When I'm going for a state dinner, I like to be ready. And I get dressed and I'm ready and I'm waiting for Auntie Lily, and I pace up and down and I get nervous." And he said, "I don't like getting there late for people to look at me. It's not a good thing to be late." So I learned from a humble person that being a good leader also meant being punctual. Now, the last thing I learned from him was humility. He was quite interested in what I was doing in UK when we came for a program, and he asked me who my professor was, which hospital I was doing my programming, and he wanted to impart some form of skills that would help in my growth as a young man. And he said, one day he said, "David, your professor, I want you to be friendly and nice to him, if it means carrying his bag after a lecture, carrying his bag or that sort of thing." And I found that very interesting, for somebody who had been a vice president. He still had that humility, sort of that knack, and he impressed me a lot about the kind of person he was. Now, this was the last time we met. I think after that meeting, in his house, he drove me with Auntie Lily. They lived in Wembley at the time, and we went to the tube station. He left with me his a complimentary card, Joe deGraft-Johnson, and we said our bye-byes. That was the last time I saw my uncle. Now, to end, one will ask me, what tribute would I give Uncle Nabane? I know there have been tributes when he died. For example, when his body arrived in Ghana, Nathan Kwao on the castle gave a wonderful tribute about him being an unsung hero. An unsung hero is somebody who's done great things, but he's never praised. And he talked about him being an academic who had done so much. How many people know that the Dansoman Housing Project, the exhibition site, the Building Road Research Institute, where those behind it, the praise always goes to politicians. Yes, Achampon did Dansoman. Never the politicians, never the academics who were doing the groundwork. This was very touching to me. another tribute came from the family, but that didn't come straight away. It came, I think, a year after. And I'm sure Letitia will vouch with me that when you go to their house in Cape Coast, there's a plaque, and on it is written Ejapaye, which in Fanti means a good father. That was another touching tribute from the family. But what would I say about Uncle Nanabe? My personal words would be that for me, the best tribute is his exemplary public life, a life of honesty and integrity. If you read the book, National Investigations Committee, how many of us have gone through public life and retired without investigations or a microscope on our work? He was being looked at not by his friends, by his enemies. They were looking for something. They were looking at his books with a microscope, looking for something. And by his conduct, he honored his father. He honored G125/1. He honored Uncle Hector. He honored Auntie Ajua. He honored Auntie C. He honored his family, and he honored his extended family. So for me, the lesson I draw from his life is a good name is better than silver and gold. Thank you very much.
Wow. A great testimonial from a nephew who used to get good tips from his uncle Nana Benyi, who was our first vice president. It's always good to hear stories like that, because we all know that some of our uncles are chisel. But as Dr. Cornelius said, this beloved uncle gave him advice, and also taught him how to be punctual. And I really like the example that you used, where he wasn't really going to call you out for being late, but he used himself as an example for when he got ready for steak dinners.
That's true.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. David. And I know Dr. Letitia is not quite ready to come on stage, but I think that these cousins need a reunion on screen for you all to see their chemistry. So we're going to bring Dr. Letitia just to have a chit chat, a quick chit chat with her cousin. Here we go, Dr. Letitia.
Hi.
I think you're muted, Dr. Letitia.
Are you there?
Yeah, I am. Thank you, David, for bringing memories of Tantry Road.
Yeah, that's right.
You didn't tell them about Aunt Acey's strictness and how she was called immovable.
Yes.
She used to sit by the doorway in the evening to watch all these boys out, going out, making sure they didn't bring any girls into the house. So they called her incontinent, because you couldn't move Aunt Acey from the doorway until everybody was in bed at night.
That's right. That's true. And yes. I think in your book you said something very interesting, which is true, that when Aunt Acey came to live with us at the time that Uncle Abe was vice president, they paid a visit to him, and she talked about the past, about Tantry, and how strict they were, and perhaps how harsh they were. And she was sort of more like conciliatory, saying, "Oh, we meant good for you. We meant the best for you." And it was quite touching, that she had to say that. But it's a testimony to the love our grandparents had for their children, that they gave their best. And I think in their heart, they prayed that they didn't think that they were too mean, but this was coming from a genuine heart.
A genuine heart indeed. And these comments, Dr. Cornelius, Beula said, "Well done, David." And we have the comments, Dr. Tish, for helping us to sing your father praises. Very well done, Cousin David. Yes, Cousin David did share some heartfelt testimony with us. Those stories, he may have been talking about his uncle Nana Benyin, but Kweku Sam said, Dr. Cornelius, wow, yes. But it tells you how he was molded also with the family support from his immediate and his extended family that has made him the kind of man he is today. Yvonne Kumi said, Tanchuri, Cape Coast. Look, the comments are, we can't highlight everybody, but we are so grateful for you, for everybody who has joined us. I know next up we're going to learn about the historic nature of our first vice president's work, and we will have our very own family member, Daniel, also join us. Thank you so much, Daniel, for joining us. We're happy to have you here. And thanks to Dr. Cornelius for that wonderful testimony. We also appreciate you, Dr. Letitia, for jumping in. We're ready for you, Daniel, to share your testimonial.
Hello. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, wherever you're watching this or listening to us. My brief is to talk about the Third Republic. And in talking about the Third Republic, to compare what had gone on before and what went after, and also highlights the things that exemplifies the very first vice president. One of the things that really comes to the fore is, in order to understand the Third Republic, one really has to look at the period that went before the last 7 years, that went before the Third Republic started. And one of the words that really aptly describes this period was written by no other person than Professor Eduboahen. Eduboahen puts it quite succinctly that the period 1972 to 1979 will definitely go down into history as the most traumatic, the most dramatic, and the most tragic period in the history of Ghana. It was a period which saw events moving with the force of a hurricane, devastating and consuming everything in the way and leaving behind nothing but social dislocation and demoralization, economic stagnation and bankruptcy, and decadence and moral degeneration and decay. Indeed, there is not a single facet of life in the country Ghana that was not affected during these dark and incredible 7 years. Those were indeed the things that happened before the Third Republic started. And the funny thing is that before the Third Republic could be ushered in, there was 112 days of utter chaos in which the junior ranks of the army rose up in what they called a revolution and wreaked havoc on the lives of so many people, leading to lots of people leaving the country. Whilst people were expecting that the leaders of this revolution would just leave and go away, where unlike the Second Republic, where Afrifa and the NLC gave their support and backing to the Busia administration, the Third Republic had the hulking figure of Jerry Rawlings hunting their every move. The Second Republic also survived for 27 months. The Third Republic also survived for 27 months. I'm not quite sure exactly why, but the fact that both of them survived for 27 months tells us that regimes in those days were always fighting for legitimacy. Are you able to provide the economic relief that the country needed? So it was under these circumstances, the measures of the previous administration, where Achampon, Akufu, all those previous leaders were brutally executed. So the PNP government that formed or came into being as a result of the Third Republic had a complex job from the 24th of September 1979 to complete or to accomplish. They had to fulfill the constitutional mandate of governing Ghana, which had gone through a popular but violent uprising, as I said, led by the AFRC. Liman, Dr. Hilary Liman, and the Vice President, J.W.S. deGraft-Johnson, needed all the skills of diplomacy to deal with the contending forces in their own party, as well as the kind of issues that they were facing, the disciplinary issues in the armed forces and the worsening economic crisis without infringing upon anyone's human rights. They thought that this was a democratic dispensation, so they respected everyone's view. Even though the PNP government did not have time to fulfill the promises in its manifesto, a dispassionate examination of the 27 months in power, if compared to the PNDC government that came into being after the 31st December 1981, or the NDC government after 2008, or the current NPP government, it shows that given the time, the PNP administration of the Third Republic would have achieved such impressive results for the country. And I'll take a look at one example which highlights JWS's exemplary role in the Third Republic. And I'll look at the energy policy of the PNP administration in the sense that it showed how the academic excellence of JWS impacted exactly on how the government was going to address a particular issue that was facing the country. One of the things I'm highlighting is namely the enhancement of renewable energy potential via the hydroelectric resources and the exploration of the potential oil-bearing geological formations for crude oil deposits along the coast of Ghana. After the construction of the Akosombo Dam in 1965, and with the coup which overthrew Nkrumah in 1966, Western governments, namely the British government, told the Afrifa government and Busia government that the construction of the Akosombo Dam and the future Bui and Pond dams were crazy prestige projects that Nkrumah had thought about. However, Professor Ivan Adai Mensah, who later on became the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, explains that by 1965, when the Akosombo Dam was built, the entire electricity requirements of the country was less than 250 megawatts. Yet Nkrumah had built a 1,000-megawatt dam with plans to build another dam downstream at Pung and also one upstream at Bui. Buzia's regime went back to Nkrumah's planned construction. The Pung Dam was eventually started by the Achampon regime in 1977, but it was the PNP administration at a cost of 650 million cedis who completed the project in 1970. In 1981.
Wow.
You see, and in completing this project, one of the projects that JWS had initiated whilst he was an academic at the University of Science and Technology was the Environmental Planning Association. This consulting group were the ones that provided the details, the model to the Volta River Authority for the the building of the Bui Township. They presented it to the Volta River Authority in November 1979 to demonstrate that Ghanaians are able to undertake the building
Thank you
of
so much.
such big.
This is teaching us history that we otherwise would not have known.
No, and this is and it is the most heart-rendering issue is that it was when the PNP government was looking for funding to build this Bui Dam that Imore Gala died on the KLM plane at the Kotoka International Airport on their way with and this Professor J.W.S. deGraft-Johnson on their way to Saudi Arabia to look for funding. So this was how dedicated that PNP administration was, putting their lives on the line just so that the administration of the or the provision of things in the country was done properly. And one of the things that I was going to talk about, which was highlighted by Dr. David Cornelius, was the fact that whilst they had been overthrown in December 1981, Jerry John Rawlings and his administration for close to 20 years did everything they could to find a fault with the administration, saying that the Third Republic, the PNP government, was corrupt, was embezzling. Nothing was found. Let me give you one concrete example which took place. The Minister for Transport and Communication, Harry Sawyer, was asked to meet with a British this delegation selling a plane, or say I think military planes to the government. And so when they met with Harry Sawyer, one of the things that Harry Sawyer asked them was that, oh, so what is it? What are you going to give me for signing this agreement? And they said, oh, okay, we'll give you 10% for you. And he said, oh, 10%. Okay, let me go and think about it. The following morning, Harry Sawyer said, if you're going to give me this 10%, why don't you increase it to 15%? And the British delegation said, oh yeah, don't worry. So yeah, we'll give you 15%. Then Harry Sawyer wrote on a note of paper, if you are willing to give me 15% for my own use, what we are going to pay you is less 15% of the price you're asking me. So this is how upright these people were, the Third Republic, the ministers in the Republic were so upright that they said, no, we'd rather reduce the charge for paying whatever, if it is 200 million pounds, we are going to pay you less 15%, because it means that you can still make profit if you are prepared to give me 15%. Harry Sawyer wasn't ready, wasn't going to take any money, but it tells you that if we have upright people in authority, the government, the country will do very well. And this is what the Third Republic stood for. And unfortunately, they were not allowed to do the work that they could have done for the country. Ghana could have been a paradise if they had been allowed to do the work that they had been given the mandate to achieve. So, yeah, this is where I think I've spoken enough, and I hope that people will appreciate the kind of work that the Third Republic stood for. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the historic perspective, because I know that there may be some of us here who did not know this history. I'm going to bring Dr. Ayi in for a comment or two. Dr. Ayi, what did you think about this discussion that we just had about the Third Republic?
I mean, I think it's truly wonderful because for me, it brings into focus that people are honestly doing a hard work for some reason, and it's not just for some reason. Daniel quoted how one historian had said from 1972 to 1979 was the most dismal, disheartening period of Ghana's history. And the perspective I see is, so long as we were being ruled by the colonial masters, people were okay with, not having enough. But then when the power was handed over to we Ghanaians or Africans to take over, there was a lot of heckling, because the minute you go into power, people assume, like they assumed about Joe, that because you are administering activities and getting things done, for some reason you're being dishonest. And the story he shared about Harry Sawyer shows how the British were willing to give him 15%. It means you really just deserve 85%. You don't need all that 100%. So I think that people are doing an honest work. And one thing that we have to share with maybe Ghanaians and people all over Africa is, the minute somebody assumes power, because some of the things they were telling Joe, you are watching us hungry, you don't care about, like, some of the problems have been there for 50, 60 years. And the fact that somebody comes into power does not suddenly mean that it's going to change your level of income. And so if you see them on the stage building dams and doing work, you don't just have to assume, yeah, there they go, quote unquote, chopping money. And I think that's the discontent. If you ask me, it was the reason why Joe and the Third Republic were kicked out of office, because the soldiers felt, within 2 years, you've got to fill our pockets and stop us from being hungry right away. And it really does. I mean, I've thought through history, and it doesn't happen that way. So I think that future governments have to disabuse people's minds about the fact that as soon as we come into power, all your socioeconomic issues are going to go away. We need to have a long-term strategy that, some of the changes we need are going to take about 20, 30 years. So if a government comes into power, let them do what they can, and the next government will pick up from there. It's not going to be immediate change. So I think Daniel's comments were very, very on point. And thank you for allowing me to give a comment.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ayi, and thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing this history with us. Our audience is saying thank you to you for enlightening us and for shedding a light on things that we did not know. And again, that's so important as to why Dr. Letitia wrote this book, because we need to document some of these things, and it gets lost in translation. So we really appreciate what everybody is bringing to the table as we launch this book. Now, viewers, listeners, The book is available everywhere books are sold. Go online, find it. The Vice President by Dr. Letitia deGraft-Okyere, available where books are sold. Go on Amazon right now as you're watching. I know you can multitask. You can go on your phone, your computer, go order your copy of the book. In Ghana, the book is going to be available at Book Nook store, where you can order it, and Book Nook store will deliver everywhere in the world. They're global folks, and so if you need for the book to be delivered to you in Germany, Book Nook store can do that as well. This is amazing, all the testimonials that you were hearing. And Dr. Letitia, I think it's time to bring you back. Thank you so much, Daniel. We really appreciate your conversation. Dr. Letitia, we have lost Sister Nanama, who was going to share about the impact that our former vice president had on her. And so as we lost Sister Nanama, we are going to Dr. Letitia so we can talk about the journey to writing the book. So I guess the first question to you, Dr. Letitia, is what made you write this lengthy, detailed book about your father?
I think the first thing was to get the story straight. You know, you listen to people talk on TV, you know, some of these commentators, and they come out with these comments that are just not true, are inaccurate, and obviously they didn't spend any time researching whatever it is they were saying. And as Betha said before, and people assume that once you hit, you know, high office, and then, you know, you become corrupt. I needed the world to know who he was, you know, how dedicated he was to his country, the sacrifices that he made, you know, not just for himself, but for us, as those who were with him. And he went in and came out as he was. He didn't change. I tell people that when he became vice president and we drove from Accra. First of all, when we were moving from Accra, Kumasi to Accra, there wasn't any big, you know, entourage or something. We took my mother's little Datsun, driven by my father's driver that had been with us since BRI, and we drove to Accra. And when we got to the house, the moment we entered the house, my father pulled my mother aside, led us into the foyer, and he stopped. You know, like, you know, children, we all wanted to run up the stairs and, you know, pick our rooms. He said, no, he stood by the staircase and said, hey, won't you not, you know, stop here. And he said, you know, like, we are us. He said, you know, we have work to do. You know, we don't want any trouble for ourselves. We expect you to behave. There are going to be extra staff members. We do not want any pomposity. I mean, like, in 10 minutes, he stripped it down for us, you know, before he allowed us to go. So people have to know that he wasn't perfect, absolutely not. But he loved his country and he wanted to help, you know, to set the country on a sound footing. So that was the first one. The second reason was the information gap. You know, people don't know anything about the Third Republic, and I struggled actually to put it together. You know, but fortunately, I'm on this side where records are properly kept. You know, so I was able to pull in, you know, all different sources. You know, and to provide a complete picture of what went on, the issues that they had to deal with, and the steps that they tried to implement to help put Ghana on a firm footing.
Well, it took you 6 years to put everything together. My question is, you had the data, you had found the information that your dad had put down. So how come it took you that long to finish the book?
No, all I found was about 12 pages. And it was just on after the coup, the first few days after the coup. So that's all I found. So it took me 6 years because, first of all, I wanted to make sure that I could back up what I was writing. So you see that I have detailed citations. It took me 6 years because, when you go into a store and you buy a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle, you get the picture and you get the pieces so you can put it together. I mean, I had no idea what the pieces were. And I actually started with a faint picture of where I wanted to go. You see what I mean? So in finding the pieces, I was putting it together, and revising it. And so like when you go through my early scripts, you see I have bits in black, I have bits in blue, and I have bits in red. The black was, I want this. The blue is, I'm not sure. The red is, I might need it. So as you go through the process, you see that the blue is becoming black and the red is becoming blue. So I had my system of making sure that I left no stone unturned. And my eldest brother was helped me a lot because he would find things and he send it to me. And in the beginning, I haven't seen this. This is interesting. And then I realized I was getting to the end when he would send me something. I said, okay, I got this. Then I realized, okay, this thing is coming to an end. And so actual writing and researching took me 5 years, but it also took me another 12 months, to do like the editing and the shaping and, and getting opinions on, what to put in and what to take out. Yeah.
That's a good lesson for aspiring writers or even writers out there, that you have to make sure you get your information straight. Dr. Letitia had their information, but she wanted to make sure that, just like a jigsaw puzzle, that everything fit together. And she was not going to put something out as a self-published author. She wasn't going to put something out that had typos and mistakes or facts that were not true, because this is a historic book that tells you about a piece of Ghana. And, I have another question for you. You mentioned other people in the book, for example, leaders who lost their lives to the regime, and you tell the story so well. Did you have any collaborators who helped you with this story?
No. I was a lot of research, like I said, books and newspapers. Like there's a library in Chicago that had Ghana's newspapers. So I ordered from 1977 to 1985, and it comes in microfilm reel. And so the library that I was using was a walking distance from my workplace. So like my lunchtime, I quickly dashed to UAMS, go in and put in my goggles and, a page by page, Marjorie, every page, if I needed it, or if I wasn't sure, I'll take a snapshot of it. And then at the end of my visit, I would save it, photocopy it and come back. So, so besides the research and the few interviews that I did, there was no collaboration per se. But you see, with these people, I kind of identified, as a child, in 1979, I understood that a coup meant somebody was going to die, and it was something that stayed with me. And was real, you see, because even though my father was an academic, as a public servant, he worked with, Kote, he worked with Feli, like in implementing government policies. So when you hear on the radio that this has been shot, it's real. It's not a distant person. You kind of know, daddy worked with this person, so you feel the pain. And then also, people don't know that on the road that we lived in Kumasi, we had a very close family friend. And if I mention the name, everybody will know. But she was a cousin of Colonel Akufu. And when Colonel Akufu was shot, she happened to be visiting him. So those of us who were close to the family almost lived the horror of, where is this auntie? How come we haven't heard from her? So for almost 2 weeks, I think it was, or 10 days, we knew that he had been shot, but we didn't know where she was. So it was a very real experience. I think I was able to, and then we went through ours in 81. So I think I was able to interject the sentiments, into those lives that were cut off at the prime when they could have been so critical to the nation's development.
Yes, cut off at the prime, because I remember we knew Justice Mrs. Cranting Ado, and that was devastating to our household when things happened. And when I was in secondary school, I happened to get to know more about the Achampong family, the Kote family, the Feli family. And so these stories it's not just stories, it's people's lives. And I remember when Flight Lieutenant former President Jerry John Rawlings died, I remember seeing all these sentiments of how great a man he was. And then I also saw comments on the flip side of people who had lost their parents as a result of President Rawlings and the pain that they felt. So it is good to put these stories in print so that the children that come after us will learn our history, that people would not just assume and follow blindly, but you make an informed decision based on the information out there. Now, Letitia, you sent the book, your manuscripts, your draft out to people to read, and you did get some feedback from some important figures. Do you mind sharing bits and pieces of that feedback with us so that our audience is encouraged about the content of the book?
So, one of so I struggled to find, I needed somebody from my parents' era, who could, look at it as, if my child was writing it, would I want all this information? And there was one thing. And then also to look at it as in terms of the historical context, the historical contribution. And so we through a cousin of mine, we decided on Professor Florence Dolphine. And she was a perfect fit because on one hand, she was my mother's classmate, so she knew us personally. On another hand, she, many might remember, she sat on the Reconciliation Committee that President Kufuor set up, and on the other hand, she's also an academic, so she would understand what I was trying to achieve. And I woke up one morning and Auntie Florence, as we call her, had left a message on my phone that, wow, Letitia, you've done well. You've been able to piece together all these complex issues. You've been able to find the information, and to kind of back what you wrote up. You didn't just put it out there. You put references. So like a cheap person would say, so one, so if my source is lying, then I guess Letitia is lying too. But like I said, I always try to back up what I wrote to ensure that people have confidence reading, and Auntie Florence confirmed that I had done that. Yes.
Well, thank you for being so thorough. So before we let you go, what do you want readers to get from the book? What is your heart's desire?
I think that I would like readers to appreciate the life story of the man, the subject, to appreciate the dedication that he had to his country, and to know that it's not like he wasn't the only one. I mean, in his generation, there were many who went to school abroad and then came back because, yes, young Ghana, we must build it up, So I want readers to get that. I also want readers to understand the historical context. When people talk about the PNP, they just kind of talk, and to understand something, you must put it in context, So this book provides the context to understand why they did what they did and what they were trying to achieve, and the possibilities, what would have happened if they had been allowed to fulfill the mandate. People don't know that they went through a whole list of coups. I mean, there was a coup attempt almost every month. You know, I tell the story of my first coup attempt, and that was soon after we went into the house, you know, and I was asleep, you know, the middle of the night, and I felt my mother nudge me that wake up, we have to leave the house. And I must have fallen asleep because she came back and said, "Hey, Letitia, Mrs. You know, Letitia, are you still asleep? Wake up and pick up your little brother. We have to leave the house." And I calmly, I got dressed. I got out of my pajamas. I got dressed, and I went to my little brother, and he was asleep. You know, and the age gap is such that I was able to just pick him up, and we went down the stairs. And my mother was there, my dad was there, and the security detail was there. And they quickly bundled up into a vehicle, and then we went to my auntie's place, Auntie Joanna, on Airport Base Cafe. And I remember thinking, oh my God, you know, that thing that happened a few months ago where, you know, Akufu and Efifa and things lost their lives, it was happening again. And I remember falling asleep and think, oh my God, is Daddy ever going to come back for us? You know, and people don't know that, you know, we had to deal with that, you know, and we had to deal with it frequently where we'd have to, you know, pack up and leave and then come back in the morning. And so the idea is that, you know, read it and see what happened in the life of the history. The history of the country.
Wow. Yeah, Dr. Ayi is backstage and saying the price of political office seems to be very high. She's saying bravo to your dad, and you guys did go through some tumultuous times, and I'm glad that you came out on the other side and that you've been able to share this testimony with the world about your dad. Susan Glover says this is a very compelling story, and Selom says this must be traumatizing for you all. Yes, Selom, it is traumatizing, but for her to have put it down is also therapeutic, and it's also to show the next generation the truth of our history. So thank you so much, Letitia. I think we will have Sister Nanama join us briefly so that she can share the impact that our former Vice President had on her life. Sister Nanama, are you ready? Hello.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Sister Nanama's connection is not the very best. We're so sorry. Yes, I think Sister Nanama is having issues with her internet connection. That is quite unfortunate. We wish she was here. Now, Letitia, Dr. Letitia, you know Sister Nanama well, and so you can you please share part of her story with us before we wrap up?
She told me that she, you know, when we went into exile, the exile set up an organization called the Ghana Democratic Movement, I think, GW, and then there was the welfare aspect of it, you know, to help refugees, settle in the UK. And so she said she was traveling in Leytonstone and she saw the advert and looking for help. So she went into the organization, and so she met my father, and she said my father was like her mentor. He taught her how to operate in the office. He encouraged her to get additional training, which she has used. And she said that she would watch him during the meetings and how he would sit back and let others talk about, interject when he wanted to, how he helped. You know, that organization also helped with immigration applications. So she said he would actually get his hands dirty and help with the application documents. You know, he would dictate things to her and she would type it and he would check, you know. So he was very involved in the welfare of the exiles, you know, who who access those resources. Yes.
Wow. That is the testimony of Nanama Amamu, who was supposed to join us. Unfortunately, she had technical difficulties. She's been on with us throughout this whole period, and we're sorry you couldn't hear her voice, but you did hear her voice through Dr. Letitia. Now we actually have a video file that I'm going to try to pull up, which has our former vice president in his element, and we're going to have it playing for you. And during that time, I would encourage all of you to go on Amazon.com to order your copy of the book. Go on Barnes & Noble. If you have an independent bookstore in your area, call them, let them know you want the book. They can order it for you. In the meantime, I'm working on that video. Hold on tight. Let's see how we can get it on the screen. Yes, it looks like we have it.
This story, I have to pay respect. It was told to me by my elder cousin, Dr. J.C. Graft-Johnson, whose brother is into that. Anyway, he told me, said that the French patriot was asked, what was your contribution when the revolution was taking place? He said, I survived. And in a way, if you have survived marriage for 30 years, I think you have to be giving some credit for it. I must tell you, though, that it's about 30 years ago that we celebrated our wedding. At that time, maybe a third of you, if not half of you, were not around. If at that time I had known some of the things that I'm going through in those 30 years, I honestly don't know what I would have done. Now, I look back at these 30 years of experience, and I'm amazed that I can even stand here and even laugh at some of the events that are taking place. Some of it very traumatic, some of it very devastating. And I will say one thing. If I did not have my wife behind me through some of these things, I would have collapsed. I'm not saying this because she's in the air. Of course, that is also part of it. Actually, one of the things about marriage, of course, that you have to bear in mind, you have to make your partner very happy. And this is our process. You do today and forget tomorrow. But getting back to this 30 years experience. Now, I started life as a solid engineer. I didn't have any crazy ideas about changing the world of the matter, changing a new place. Nevertheless, somewhere along the line, I don't know whose idea it was, but I got myself messed up. One fine morning, ladies and gentlemen, one day I'm a big boss, everybody bowing down to me. The next day, I am in jail. This is one of the prices you have to pay for African politics. And mind you, today I claim seniority on the basis of that. Because if you haven't been jailed, you have. And you ain't got no political experience. And, you know, oh yes, thank you, please graduate. Because, you know, in the unified political game, there are also some people who think they are big hands. And if you don't have half the experience they've got, then an advantage. And one of it is, of course, being in prison. But example. You'll be amazed the sort of solidarity amongst prison graduates. You ain't got no solidarity. I remember when I was released, somebody came to my bungalow the other day and said, I have to make sure that all my windows are closed and all my doors are closed. And I said, no, I don't have no problem. I know all the thieves in the area.
Well, it seems like you couldn't hear me because I was on mute. I didn't realize that this was a man with a great sense of humor. Thank you for sharing this clip from his life. We will be sharing the clip on Margie TV in full length, and so you can come back tomorrow and just view the entire clip. Letitia, what do you say about your father making everybody laugh? He was obviously working the room.
Magnificent sense of humor, and when he laughed with his entire body. I mean, everything shook, you know. He said one of the things that helped him go through the difficulties that life threw at him was his sense of humor. I mean, he knew how to pack it in, and I think it was a gift. You know, one of the things that God gave, maybe God knew what he would have to deal with it and said, because I mean, everywhere, you know, he had people in stitches. I mean, he's telling you his real thing, but he'll know how to say it, you know, to get a smile out of you. Yeah, that was him. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Obviously he did, because talking about people, you know, the fact that he had been to jail and he was cracking a joke out of that. So thank you so much. Now, to our audience, you know, we see your comments. Auntie Rama and her smile, loving this video. Yes, Eudocia, the video is going to be available for you all to watch. Yes, it's such a gem that we were able to be able to show it to you, thanks to Letitia and how she could dig through the archives. Yes, Kweku says, such a great man. We thank God for his life. Yes, we are honoring him today. And it's so befitting that we're able to do it and also have a live video, because then it makes us feel like he is present. He is with us. And he is smiling down on you from heaven, Dr. Letitia, for doing this for him and for honoring him. Now, Beula said he had a great sense of humor. That is so true. We can all tell from this live video that he did. Elsie Dixon says, congratulations. Now, we've had people join us from the UK, Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Canada, USA, and different states. We are so thankful to you. But you know, the best thing for you to do today is to let's make Dr. Letitia a bestseller. And she also has other books on there. So when you go find The First Vice President by Dr. Letitia deGraft-Okyere and you click on her profile, you're going to see her other books. Now, Dr. Letitia, we are out of time, but please tell us about the historic children novels books that you have out there, so that our audience would know that they have to look for your work.
And I'm Rosie, that you've met before. And what we do is we take people who have changed the world that they lived in, and we write short biographies for children. So I have one on Eleni, I have one on Gate, I have one on Tetu Betu, and also Rosie has some on Yasantwa and Amina and Shaka Zulu's mother. I can't remember his name. Yeah, so look it up and you see that, and we have this going and we intend to add some more. Yes.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. I know that Rosie just came up with one on the former president of Liberia. And I read that book. It was like, oh my goodness, she grabbed it. The girl who became president. And so thank you, ladies, for being the lions, historians, and putting the work out there. We have Letitia saying she thanks God for your dad's life and for celebrating him in such a unique way. Rachel says she smiles just remembering Auntie Lily and how you sound like her when you speak Fanti. Letitia, Dr. Letitia, can you speak some Fanti for us before we close today?
Well, okay, let me tell you a little story. So my father had a friend, Uncle Wapia, and they were both thrown into exile. Uncle Bo was a lawyer, my father was a civil engineer, and when they both retired, my father learned how to cook a mean stir fry. So sometimes say, so Uncle Bo will come, he come armed with his bottle of wine, and they would talk and laugh. In those days, I was in law school, so I'll be upstairs studying, and they'll be rocking the downstairs with laughter. Could hear them stomping and stuff. And so one time they had this rapturous laughter, and I wondered what's going on. So I opened the door. So they were giggling and laughing, and then as they were coming out of the laughter, Uncle Bo said, "Not being fancy, I said, not being experienced, no fancy then." My father was giving, oh, also your mama and then you should have heard the house come down. Obviously, if you understand French, mama is not experienced, and mama who really is the troubles I've seen, but they were talking about their experiences and how that, as professionals, they had ended up in England as exiles. Yeah.
Well, that was wonderful. That was truly wonderful. We have had a great time together as a family. For the launch team, I'd like to say a big thank you for this, for spending your Saturday afternoon and evening here on screen. Now, as we said, buy the book, leave the reviews. That is so important. From Dr. Letitia, Dr. David, Dr. Bertha, Daniel, Reverend Kofi, Sister Nanama, Rosemont, and Margie Marge, who is myself, we say thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being part of this celebration. We really appreciate you, and we hope that you will leave that review on the first vice president. Tell your friend about the book, tell your network about the book, and together let us make Ghana proud. This has been the book launch of the first vice president. Thank you all.